Test mic, 1, 2, 3, mic test. Good afternoon, everyone. Our lesson for this afternoon is entitled Chinese Popular Religion. Before we will start, let us bow heads for prayer. The Lord, as we will begin our study this afternoon, please guide us, our Father, and may your Holy Spirit work within us, that we may be able, dear Lord, to come to learn of you as we will begin our study, as we will take part in learning religion. Dear Father, help us to be able to understand this, that we may effectively relate your message. Thank you so much for hearing and answering our prayer. I this Jesus' name we pray. Once again, good afternoon, everybody. Our lesson today is entitled Chinese Popular Religion. Now, what is your religion? Many Chinese people might find this question difficult to answer because their religion is a synthesis of separate elements. Their religion has many elements that goes together. You have their traditional religion, you have Buddhism, you have Confucianism, and you have Taoism. Taoism is also called Taoism. So what they believe and practice is drawn from various elements of these systems, brought together in a more or less coherent fashion. For them, it only makes sense to draw from the best of the ancient wisdom, because Buddhism exists independently of this syncretism. So you have this syncretistic religion coming from Confucianism and Taoism, but yet, as we have studied last time, we talked already about what Buddhism is. This is independent from this syncretistic. So Taoism could do the same and has done so to some extent. However, in terms of Chinese folk religion, these constituents come together along with other elements to make up this complex system that is the faith of millions. So we will refer to this as Chinese popular religion. It is still practiced widely by Chinese people outside of the People's Republic of China and is making a comeback even there since the political climate has become more favorable. So Chinese popular religion continues to develop. By its very nature, it is fluid, adaptable, and subject to various influences. For example, the current popular cult of female deities, we have Mazu and Guanyin. This has come to blossom over the last 200 years. So we can expect the synthesis to continue to evolve into new forms in the future under the impetus of modern communication. So in this chapter, we will take a look at these various systems of origin and how they have come to shape Chinese popular religion today. All right, so let's begin with this traditional religion. So Chinese culture treats old age as noble attainment and seeks to endow even relatively late development with a venerable heritage. So thus, it is not easy to separate what is said to be ancient from what actually represents earliest antiquity. For example, the traditional mythic emperors were probably not known until the time of Confucius. The earliest, some of them even later. So the earliest reliable reports come from Shang Dynasty, which ruled a part of China about 15,000 BC to 10,040 BC. So this is the first of the many Chinese dynasties about which we have at least some historical information. Now around that time, the Aryans, remember the Aryans who invaded India and Iran, and Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. The people of Shang tribe in central China were able to establish a relative stable kingdom. Okay, so the Aryans came to India. That was also the time Moses led Israelites out of Egypt, and the Shang dynasty went able to establish in central China. They engaged in agriculture, knew how to work metal, and lived in fortified towns. They also developed a form of writing. So the religion of the Shang dynasty was traditional. And the highest spiritual power belonged to a god in heaven, even as ancestors and nature spirits increasingly became the objects of ritual. The god in heaven was called Shangdi. He was seen as the author of a moral law that all people, particularly the rulers, were obligated to observe. He was worshipped with animal sacrifices. So the ensuing Zhao dynasty also worshipped Shangdi as the universal god, but started to identify Shangdi with heaven itself, his abode, which they revered with the name Tian. So the two distinct traits characterized by early Chinese religion and continue to influence Chinese belief and practices to this day. First, there was a close relationship between state and religion. So in both the Shang and Zhao dynasties, the welfare of the empire was thought to depend on the piety of the people, particularly the rulers. So the Zhao rulers claimed that they had been given the throne because the Shang had been corrupt and abandoned obedience to God. So conversely, it was believed that if the emperor was a man of virtue and was faithful in exercising his ritual obligations, such as performing the fall and spring sacrifices, all would be well with the empire. So this interconnectedness of political and religious spheres was important for two reasons. One, it was eventual political breakdown of ancient China that spawned religious creativity. So in China, right in the 20th century, questions of state government have always seen as basically religious questions. Second, the Chinese deities, as they were developed much later, were established in an administrative hierarchy. So there is this hierarchy, the same as with the Hindu. So there was this administrative hierarchy in heaven that mirrored the feudal. So there's the feudal lords order of the earthly government. Now, the second distinct trait of early Chinese religion was emphasis on divination. Many, if not most, traditional religion include some form of divination in their ritual. In some cases, the practice achieves greater prominence as it did among the West African Yoruba. Later on, we will study about this. Another such case from its very beginnings to the present day is Chinese religion. So at the heart of divination practice, as it has come down from the earliest records, is the idea that there is a basic, balance of nature. You have yin yang, right? If that balance is disrupted in some way, the resulting disturbance leaves marks on the natural order that can be discerned by the trained eye. So the whole world consists of two opposing complementary forces. You have yin and you have yang, which are optimally in perfect balance with each other. So here you have yin and you have yang. So yin is passive while yang is active. Yin is earth related, yang is sky related. It's cold, hot, moist, dry, mysterious, clear, dark, light, and feminine and masculine. So it is important to recognize that neither force itself is good or evil. Good is the proper balance between the two. So this is how they believe, a balance between these two yin and yang. Evil is imbalance in either direction. So when there is too much yin, there needs to be more yang. If there is an excess of yang, more yin needs to be injected. So the correct balanced state of yin and yang is expressed by Tao. We call this Tao. So Tao means the way, that's Taoism. Tao means the way, the correct flow of things in proper harmony. So the philosophy and religion of Taoism exploits this notion much further. However, the basic notion of Tao, consisting of right balance between yin and yang, is a property of all Chinese thought, all those schools. So this is, the basics of Chinese thought, the balance between yin and yang. So early traditional Chinese religion always associate divination with the practice of its ritual. For example, when the emperor performed the great semi-annual sacrifices, his priests would also perform auguries on behalf of the person of the emperor and the empire. So one favorite method was to hit a tortoise shell in the fire until it cracked. So interpreting the cracks reveal the occult causes of current events or predicted future events. So wow, so they would interpret things of the future depending upon the crack on that tortoise, the shell of a tortoise. So another method of divination was described in the early book Yi Jing, the book of changes. And I will not be explaining that anymore. Let's go to the wisdom. All right. So the wisdom, okay. Now the crisis in politics, religion, and language. So the Zhao dynasty eventually weakened itself through abuse of power and internal corruption, and the empire entered a long period of disintegration. So with the weakening of central authority, the various smaller states, they severed themselves from the empire and began a long centuries struggle from ascendancy. So there was a war between these small states and the empire. There was civil war. So eventually, this fragmentation led to the era known as Warring States period, the last 200 years of the nominal Zhao rule. But even before this time of virtual anarchy, there was this great political and social turmoil. So the stability of the empire was a necessary condition for the equilibrium of Chinese religion. Now, the sacrificial ritual carried out by the emperor validated all the sacrifices performed by other further down the chain of feudal hierarchy. So the collapse of social order destroyed the efficacy of ritual practices throughout the empire. So there was this collapse of the feudal lords, and so it destroyed the ritual practices. Thus, the political crisis signaled as a religious crisis. Now, the ancient Chinese sages saw the political crisis as a crisis in communication also. Individual words were echoing different layers of meaning. So, words are no longer fully understood. It holds its own meaning. The Chinese language was becoming increasingly awkward. So even though the phenomenon may sound improbable to us, it was real enough that Confucius, when asked what he would do first if he were king, replied he would rectify names. That is, assign an equivocal meanings to words. So apparently, one word amazed so many different meanings that any written code of law would be too ambiguous to be useful. Think of how English words acquire meanings. The word dial is derived from the word Latin dies, meaning day. So it became the word for the face of sundial and then the face of any clock. Subsequently, dial was used for any rounds, selecting this such as a rotating part of a telephone, you dial, right? The radius dials and the telephones were diagnosed with push button dials. This process occurred in the Chinese language in far more crucial areas. So you also have the word Hsiang meant elephant, and hence ivory, hence carved ivory tablets representing Roman objects. As anything that stood for or represented something else or image symbol, finally though not, I think, feel well after the Christian era, the word came to life as resembling. So clearly the ancient Chinese themselves felt that the language problem was serious and they have to address this through various philosophical remedies. Number one is mohilist and legalist. So this is how they address this communication problem that they had. So in the 16th century, that's the beginning of many religious movements worldwide. The number of school of thoughts in China had attempted to address this problem through the whole Chinese empire. Two of them, number one is Taoism and Confucianism. So these are the two things that we will be learning, Taoism and Confucianism. So we will be discussing this in greater length. So there were two others that also had some impact on the development of Chinese thought. So we have the teaching of Muzi, rivaled Confucianism. This was in popularity for that time. The Muhis, named after their teacher, maintained that embracing the principle of all pervasive and universal love would destroy the empire. And you have also the Laozi. According to this legend, Lao Tzu was born at the age of 72, and the justification for this rather surprising notion is that anyone as wise as this man could not possibly have been born as a squalling infant. Instead, he came into the world possessing white hair and the ability to speak. So the name Laozi means old sage, although another version interprets this as a birth story of an old child. Now, let's go to the wisdom. And you have Dao De Jing. Now, Dao, as we had learned, means way. De means power or virtue, and Jing means book. Thus, the Dao De Jing is the book of the way and its power. The title says that by following the way, the power for a virtuous life will be realized. The philosophy of the Tao Te Ching can be summarized in the word quietism. Okay, so the solution to the empire lies in doing as little as possible, which is quiet. So we have this Chinese thought, the notion of Tao, the way, or of the balance. But the different schools are at odds as how Tao is found. So the point of the wisdom is that it cannot be found neither through words nor actions. It must reveal itself. Anything that anyone does or says only obscures the Tao. So true Tao lies beyond words. Okay, true Tao lies beyond words. So this is the meaning of Dao Jining. True Dao lies beyond words. So the first chapter of the Tao Te Ching states that it was from the nameless that heaven and earth sprang. What this means is that Tao itself lies beyond human categorization in terms of language and rational thought. Trying to put its reality into words produces a mere imitation that does not convey the reality of Tao. Thus, Tao is non-dual. Okay, the term also describes the Zen view of reality as being neither one nor multiple, but being beyond categories. So, in point of fact, there's a certain amount of scholarly consensus that it was Taoist idea of the Tao that spurred the development of Zen. So Zen Buddhism actually started from the Tao, the Taoist philosophy point of view. What should be done about language in the empire? Taoist answer is obvious: nothing, because it's quietism, right? Since ultimate truth lies beyond words, trying to coerce a firm meaning onto language is counterproductive. Thus, Taoism took a third path on this issue. Now, early Taoism attempted to combine philosophical conclusions with meditative techniques. So you have philosophy and you have meditation. Some adherents withdrew from the world and attempted to lead totally passive lives on the basis of these principles. One of their methods of returning to a primordial state was called embryonic breathing. The adepts would attempt to emulate the condition of an infant, the infant inside the mother's womb. So the Tao Te Ching teaches that the value judgments made by human minds are based on arbitrary standards. Chapter 2 in the Tao Te Ching book states, it is because every under heaven recognizes beauty as beauty that the idea of ugliness exists. Since ultimate reality is beyond categories, opposing values are not really real. They are expressions of human conventions. So this chapter asserts that opposing categories such as beauty and ugliness, virtue and wickedness, difficult and easy, long, short, high, low, even the supposedly fundamental categories of being and non-being are merely relative. The only valid response to escape from making judgment altogether. And let's go to summarize Tao Te Ching. When people abandon all attempts to force a better life for themselves or for society, and when they retreat into a wuwet alone, the Tao will manifest itself. So you don't have to do anything. It's quietness. Okay. The Tao will manifest itself. The natural harmony for people and society will just come about by itself. So this is the Tao is how they address the language issue. So popularization and transformation. Okay, in the Taoist. Uh, Clearly, these philosophical speculations are a far cry from an organized religion with temples, priests, and rituals. The wisdom needed to undergo serious transformation if it was to become a religion of the people. Revisions in the wisdom occurred as philosophy became popularized. First, it became the undergirding for endeavors in alchemy and in the search for immortality. So you have alchemists, right? And you have search for immortality. And it eventually evolved into personal gods and the religious rituals. So at first, there was this undergirding endeavors with alchemy. Alchemists these are pagan, from pagan origin, and search for immortality, and it evolved into having personal gods and religious rituals. So a popularizer of the wisdom was in 4th century was Zhongzi. Okay, he wrote a series of essays in which he illustrated with the anecdotes of philosophy of the wisdom. Lao Tzu was protagonist in some other stories. In an amusing episode, he describes a fictional meeting between Lao Tzu and Confucius. So after Confucius returned from talking with Lao Tzu, his disciples asked him how he had admonished Lao Tzu. Zhongzi has Confucius reply, who he said, "I was a dragon. My mouth was agape. I could not shut it. How then do you think I was going to admonish Lao Tzu?" With stories such as this, Zhongzi made the point that Taoist philosophy provided a genuine alternative to Confucian ritualism. So Confucianism became the state-sanctioned philosophy during the Han dynasty. Uh, Now, you have this number of uh, Confucian stories, and let's go to. So as Buddhism became popular in China, Taoism needed to define itself. So later on, we learned that Buddhism had crept in to China. So Taoism needed to define itself more clearly. So Buddhism brought with a large number of divine figures in the persons of Buddha, the Bodhisattvas. So in order to compete, Taoism clarified its own pantheon of personal gods. Around 1000 AD, a hierarchy of gods were developed. It was arranged in a bureaucracy similar to the bureaucracy of imperial officials. So the lowest of this jurisdiction is the earth god, or you have to be Jing, who presides over a very small territory, such as a field, street, or neighborhood. If he provides well for his constituents, he may eventually be promoted. If he performs poorly, however, he may be deposed and replaced by another spirit that performs the same function. Local earth gods report to gods in charge of cities and provinces. So at the end of the whole pantheon, you have the Jade Emperor, or Yuhuang, who is loosely identified with Shangdi and supervises the entire order of the universe. Now, so to compete with the Buddhism, Taoism was this added the gods in hierarchical order. So a favorite grouping of the deities in contemporary temples consists of three great emperors. You have Yu, Yao, and Shun. Yu, as the greatest, stands in the middle. And one of the most important deities in the Taoist pantheon is the kitchen god. So you have Zhao Jun, Chao Jun. He is said to live in the stove in every house. So a tablet is mounted above the stove. The kitchen god receives monthly observances, but is especially prominent on New Year's Day. So when he reports on the lives of the family members to the Jade Emperor. So the wisdom developed a priesthood that served in the temple. So they have the hierarchy of gods, and we have the priest took on particular importance in carrying out funeral rituals, such as Taoist originated practices persist in Chinese popular religion. So now let's go to Confucianism. What is Confucianism? Okay, let's take a look at this now. Um, how did ancient Chinese sage come by a Latin name? So his real name was Confuzi. Okay, the real name of the founder of Confucianism. His real name was Confuzi. Confucius was a Latin transcription devised by early Jesuit missionaries. So Confucius was born into a family of nobility that had fallen on hard times. So at age 15, he entered the civil service, advancing to Minister of Justice by the time he was 50. Even as he worked hard at his professional obligations, he continued to study ancient history and philosophy. So 7 years after becoming a minister, Confucius fell victim to court intrigues and had to leave not only the palace but also his home province. So he began a long period of itinerant teaching and accumulated a band of disciples who numbered in thousands by the time of his death. So they accompanied him as he tried to convince the people, particularly the rulers, of his ideas. So he had was these followers already. His efforts were ultimately successful already during the Han Dynasty, which began during the 3rd century. So Confucianism has become the official imperial philosophy. So it had become a philosophy first. So Confucius has been credited with authorizing numerous books. In fact, most ancient Chinese classics, so you have the example of Yi Jing, have been attributed in part to him. So though probably without warrant, but the central writing containing his teaching is known in English as the Analects of Conversations, or in Chinese you call it Lun Yu. So Confucius' solutions to the problem of the empire steered a middle course between the quietism, remember, the quietism of the Taoist, the authoritarianism of the legalist, and the personalism of the Mohist. So I would repeat that. Confucius' solution to the problem of the empire steered a middle course between the quietism of the Taoist, the authoritarianism of the legalist, and the personalism of the Mohist. So in simple terms, Confucius wanted all people to return to the basic model of an ideal state as it was supposedly lived out in a golden age, so a long time ago under the original ideal emperors. So he wanted all people to return to this basic model of to have an ideal state lived in the golden age. So if everyone studied exactly how people behaved back then in later ways, then harmony, peace, and prosperity would result. So he would want the people to return back to the basic model before, that they may be able to learn, to be harmonious and peaceful. Thus, in contrast to the wisdom, action is necessary to attain the Tao. So the Tao is the way, right? The true way. And for the Taoist, you just have to be quiet, quietism. But for Confucius, you have to do something, to act on it. So over against legalism, the actions are not arbitrary, but based on an ideal model. Unlike Mohism, personal virtue and love are only part of the total model of society. So Confucius thought that the healing of the state should begin with the rectification of names. What he had in mind was two-edged reform of language. On the one hand, language should be clarified so that people could fulfill their duties exactly, and there would be no question about what constitutes a crime and punishment. On the other hand, Confucius also believed that things ought to be brought in line with their names, particularly people's that according to the title they chose to. What is the title they should practice? For example, a prince should act like a prince. One looks in vain for any new religious doctrines in the teachings of Confucius. There are no new gods. No new gods. Unlike the hierarchy of gods of the West, act of worship or revelation in his message, he concentrated entirely on the proper execution of duties. So basically, Confucianism is somewhat a bit similar with Buddhism, since you know that the emphasis is on duties. So if those duties included ritual obligations toward departed ancestors, then they should be fulfilled punctiliously. So one of their duties is to be able to, to have this ritual toward the departed loved ones, ancestor worship, perhaps. But Confucius shied away from any other further speculation about the spirit world or life after death. He saw himself as having been called by Tian or heaven to perform his teaching ministry. So he understood that call as a preordained fate allocated to him, not a religious experience. Now, the core concept in Confucius teaching is the principle of Jin, which can be roughly translated as the attitude seeking the welfare of others. So Jin is for the prince, for belief, seeking the attitude of seeking the welfare of other people. The meaning of uh, Jin stops short of altruistic love. It does not include sacrificing one's own aims completely for other people, but you actually pronounce this as Ren, Jin, yeah, Ren. It provides the inner basis for carrying out what would otherwise be simply mechanical roles in society. So people should care for others and respect their humanity, allowing their aims to take precedence in all was these areas. Now, Confucius stated what Westerners have patronizing called the silver rule. You have the golden rule. They also have the silver rule. Do not do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. So the second principle of the teaching of was this. So first one is what? Seeking the welfare of others. Second, the principle of doing the right thing at the right time. So these are the principles of Tao. First is seeking the welfare of others. Second is doing the right thing at the right time. It can be translated as propriety. Okay. Let's take a look at the still. Um, Now propriety. Now combining Ren and Li. So Li is the propriety. Propriety is doing the right thing at the right time. Now Confucius summarized human interaction as consisting of 5 basic relationships. Each partner in each relationship is expected to exhibit one particular attitude. If all people did their part in this relationship, society would be healed. Okay, so a modern reader is struck by the fact that women are involved here only in terms of showing obedience to their husbands. So you have here father kindness, eldest brother gentleness, husband righteous behavior, elder humane consideration, the son filial piety, the younger brother should have humility, wife obedience, junior deference, and subject loyalty. So in terms of the character of Chinese culture, there's nothing more important than the notion of filial piety. What is this? It's the obedience of children over their parents. Filial piety is unconditional obligation. It does not depend on the parents' deservedness or rectitude. Even if parents expect something of a son that may strike the son as wrong, he still is obligated to fulfill his parents' wishes. And he must do so without causing his parents lose face. So basically, this is like the same with shame and honor society, where was this the group, okay, is much more important than the individual. Now let's go to the later developments of the wisdom, Confucianism. Sorry. So Chinese religion recognized Confucius as a god. Again, Chinese religion recognized Confucius as a god. They see Confucius as a god. But it is possible to make too much of that fact. First, Confucius would have received his due veneration as esteemed ancestor along with many other people. Second, the ladder of promotion from esteemed ancestor to widely venerated ancestor to eventual godhood is one that has been traversed by numerous other human beings, including the original mythical emperor. So we have this. Was this from being from an esteemed after you die, you become an esteemed ancestor, then venerated, and eventually to godhood. The same is true with what is happening with the emperors. The point here is that Confucianism is not an important part of Chinese religion because it introduced the worship of Confucius. The fact that he was eventually worshipped as a god is almost incidental. It is true that a cult worshiping Confucius as a god developed, which eventually declined. So yeah, there were was these groups that worship him, and they had become a cult. The first Han emperor who took the throne after the disastrous Qin dynasty with its legalistic philosophy decreed that Confucius was the official state philosophy. This decree had twofold effect. So after that, the Qin dynasty, they decreed, gave a command that Confucianism is the official state philosophy. There's twofold effects of this. Number one, giving Confucius a permanent place among Chinese sages, even when Confucianism was not in the front of this thought, and also reserving for Confucius a place of highest veneration. Eventually, temples were dedicated to his worship, and the emperors of the later Tang dynasty carried out opulent sacrifices in his honor. So later on, after Confucianism became the state philosophy, people they had come to worship Confucius. Now they erected temples just for his worship. And Confucius' thought was the subject of interpretation of elaboration. There were three philosophers stands out, so we will just skip that. And the popular synthesis among this, so you have these basic beliefs. So the whole character of Chinese popular religion flows in the direction of plethora of rituals and obligations, without much discernible doctrinal underpinning. So the philosophy of Tao Te Ching, the learned ruminations of Confucius, and the abstract speculation of Buddhism have proceeded from this side. The second important aspect of popular Chinese philosophy of life is the emphasis on luck. Remember luck, so many Chinese believes on this, and they have many rituals for luck. Speculatively inclined people may explain the vicissitudes of fortune in terms of the balance of this natural force. You have feng shui, this is luck, right? All this life is a gamble. With luck, things go well. Without luck, there is trouble. Okay, and then let's go to the temple worship. So the temples of popular Chinese religion is the places of communication and transaction. So all the worship is a part of religious worship within a temple. It would be misleading to think of these buildings as a house of worship. So worship is only a means to an end. It is a part of the obligatory pattern of dealing with the gods that exist primarily to serve humans. So ideally, according to feng shui principles, a temple should face south or yang, with a body of water behind it to the north, yin. So local conditions, of course, may dictate a different arrangement. Chinese temples are easily recognized by the carved, highly decorated roof. So the entrance of the temple is guarded by several representations of guardian spirits. So you have the tiger or the yang, the one-sided dragon or the yin. So Chinese temples usually have a high threshold because it is so that the evil spirits tend to walk the shuffling galt, and they trip over the threshold when they try to enter. And of course, the worshipper lights several incense sticks, grasps them between his hands, brought this together in prayer, face heaven or Tian for a few moments, and then deposit the sticks into the pot. The person hopes to establish a connection with the spirit world so that the divine beings will pay attention to everything the worship does. And now I will leave to you to read what's this the remaining explanation of that, and we will go straight to how to relate. So when you meet a Chinese, okay, uh, when you meet a Chinese with ties to popular religion, what might you expect? So clearly, there is no way to discuss all of the many important distinctions that come into play with interface between American culture and Chinese cultures. There are, after all, more than 1 billion Chinese. So for the purpose of this brief, so American culture tends to be what? Individualistic. Chinese culture is communally oriented. Communal. The same is true with the Jewish religion. It is not individualistic, but it is communal, the community. So on numerous occasions, when asked a Chinese person, "What do you like?" the answer came back, "Oh, we like," right? So American culture tends to be direct and confrontational, and Chinese culture prefers less direct interaction. The worst fate that we have a Chinese person as well as other Asians is to lose face. So if you lose face for the whole community. That is to put spot with the embarrassment. That is crucial, never to put someone on the spot by directly exposing a mistake or arguing with a person to the corner. So the American culture tends to allow more public expression. The emotion that Chinese culture does, American culture is not excessively emotional. It may encourage people to show how they feel. The Americans are touched by occasional public tears. If they think that a person has been wronged sufficiently, they may allow him to lose his temper. In Chinese culture, public display of emotion is considered loss of face. Rather than raising one's voice in an argument, the general rule of a thumb is that quieter conversation gets, the more serious the conflict. So public display of your emotion in the Chinese versus religion is a no-no. Now, uh, we have to understand this that the Chinese person typically display loyalty to community and family that is firmly rooted in the Confucian this principle. So that the family ties of the Chinese religion is very, very important. The same is true with the Jewish. So if you are not, if you are not part of them, then you will be excommunicated. Now, the person coming out of Chinese religion is likely to carry a sense of inadequacy. So the Chinese person often lives in a universe consisting of force beyond human control. People are expected to control those forces through ritual, and yet some forces can double back again and again in their existence. And the family ties that can keep a person from becoming a Christian are real and powerful. So this is how they view it. So accepting Christ can be seen as total abdication of the Chinese Yang's identity. So the conflict is internal as well as external. So these are hard demands that contemplate, we have to contemplate the pseudo religions environment of American culture. They're not easy to live out setting that is hostile to Christianity. Perhaps when you think of the American culture where most part becoming a Christian, at least a nominal Christian, carries virtually no price tag as the exception. So of course, despite this so the main obstacle for a Chinese is community, because they are a communal in environment. For you to accept other religion is a no-no. So of course, despite these very little obstacles, millions of Chinese people have responded to the gospel with faith in Christ. Not only there are many thriving churches in Hong Kong, Taiwan, there is also in the Republic of China, where Confucianism style authoritarianism has been used to promote atheism. Christianity has persisted and grown in it for many American Christians. So um, we have to understand them. We have to understand, of course, in every part of China, they have their own cultural folk religion. So one way is to be able to understand them, to be able to create that harmony with them by starting with the commonality that we have in them. And of course, we have to, I think, was this to let them feel that they belong. Belongingness is very much more important because they are a communal environment. The moment they feel that they belong with us, then they will be able to accept that Jesus Christ as their Savior. So thank you everybody for listening, and hope that you were blessed with this study, and please continue uh, with your journal and also participate in the forum for this week, and also check your attendance on Wednesday and continue with the rest of our requirements. Thank you everybody, and God bless us all.